Hello, this is Jamie.
And this is Heather.
And welcome to Using Our Inside Voice, a podcast where we awaken to the extraordinary meaning of everyday mundane life by passing it through a particle collider of different and differing perspectives. Today we are using our inside voice to talk about the message that's been coming through in pieces all week.
All week. Yeah, a lot has been coming through, mostly
And
for
it's
you.
only Tuesday.
Okay, since last for a week's worth of time.
Weeks worth of time. And I'm saying it and I'm like, it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, but they don't
It's
know
a long
that.
week already.
They don't know that. They don't need the persnicketiness.
But it's funny. So I like to mention because it is. It's only Tuesday, and it does feel like it's been. I actually had this problem yesterday. Yesterday I thought it was like Wednesday, and it was Monday.
I haven't been able to time at all. I mean, it was, when we were going through the pandemic, it was, why bother timing? Who cares? And I was already having a hard time before the pandemic. But now I can't keep track of anything. I have to constantly refresh my memory. And there's the other issue, which, who doesn't have this issue where the date by number and the actual day it falls on, very likely to double book myself or completely forget someone's birthday because, your birthday's on Thursday. And then you think, or it's on the 27th, but you don't realize that Thursday is the 27th and,
27th,
whatever.
yeah.
So timing is not, it's not a thing I'm good at. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not fantastic at it either, unless I have things set up like through my phone with reminders, or I have sticky notes around the house, then it's probably not happening. Or my concept of how far away that thing is drastically misinterpreted.
Yeah. So now here's the thing that you all need to understand about when we come in to record. We come in to record with a message. Once we see that message is both extended/extensive, and then we realize it involves both of us, then we realize there are ties to either events we're supposed to go to or that we have planned. And that tells us that this reaches out into the collective and it's something to talk about.
Yeah.
It's not just a personal, while there are personal aspects and we each gain something personal from it, the reason we share it is not so you can gain what we've gained from it. The reason we share it is because the energy that the message is coming through with is going to offer you something while you listen to us figure out and derp around our own shit. It will hopefully offer you something to derp around in for your own shit. And that's why we bother recording in the first place.
And furthermore, it doesn't matter if we recorded this 3 weeks ago or 2 days ago. The message will still apply. Whenever it gets to, like, you're going to listen to this whenever you need to hear it. So if you listen to this a year after we record it, or 4 years after we record it, somewhere, something is going to tie into something that you have going on in your life or had going on in your life that you needed explaining, or you're going to link some things together. And that's what happens for us in the moment too. So, the perfectly explaining that everything is happening all at once all the time. So, don't necessarily get caught up on the timing of things, because although there are some instances where that is a thing, we've learned not to worry about it so much in this case. And pretty much in the case of anytime we're talking about anything that's spiritual in nature, because again, everything is happening all of the time. Man. So so we have to title our little broadcast as we're going into it. And I always put something that's just a basic placeholder. And today I titled it WTF, solstice, and tattoo. Because
So
I couldn't even
specific.
I couldn't even brain like putting a full sentence together
Hmm.
because I kind of feel like mush, and I've kind of felt like mush since yesterday. Part of that had to do with the horrible heat that we had yesterday. It was
Hmm.
hot
Hmm.
in SoCal yesterday, and both of us kind of turn into puddles when it's warm outside.
I turn into a grouch. I have no patience. I am grouchy. I am likely to snap. Uh, it's not fun. And every year it happens. And every year I have a talk with myself when I see the hot temperatures approaching. And I say, you know, this happens every year. You experience this every summer. You're going to be tired and foggy and befuddled and annoyed. And you're just going to have patience with your environment and with yourself. And then it happens. And I'm like, and it's pretty much where I've been for a few days now. So, yeah.
I feel that. But yeah, in my derping about yesterday, in my frustration at the heat and the not being able to brain fully, I decided to get lost for a moment in
In my
TV.
eyes. Oh, sorry. What? TV. Right.
Yeah. And in hopes to not come across anything that I was going to have to like stop watching because Brian was going to walk into the room and going, "Are you watching that without me?" Because that's what normally happens when
Hmm.
I watch something and he doesn't watch something. I'm like, "All right, I'm going to try to find something that he wouldn't possibly be interested in. Let's go look the Gaia network up and see if there's anything interesting that they've put on my we recommend for you list." And the last couple times I've hopped on there, I've seen this one in particular, and I wasn't familiar with the name that they were using, or I preface this with, okay, I wasn't really familiar with the name that they were using um for this group of beings that they were presenting, and I was curious, but at the same time, like, I love Gaia. I think Gaia is a cool channel. It has a lot of interesting um, programming that links to more metaphysical, spiritual things. So, in that way, it's nice sometimes to be able to just jump into something and hear people chat very openly and freely about stuff that most people would kind of, cock their head to the side and go, huh? Like, what are you talking about? Um, so when I found this little suggestion yesterday, I was like, okay, well, this is probably not something that Brian's going to be super interested in. Like, he'd watch it, but he probably wouldn't be like, oh, don't watch it until I can watch it with you. So I went ahead and I put it on, and I have to admit, it's not the type of programming that I would normally actually watch on Gaia. Like I said, Gaia has some good programming out there, but there's also some stuff that I usually kind of go, I don't know about that.
Hmm.
And tend to kind of pass over. There's jumping down the rabbit hole and saying yes to all the things. And then there's another level of that I feel sometimes infringes upon uh my logic in a particular way that I that I'm not down with all the time. So there are certain things that I kind of avoid. And this would have been one of those things that I just would have avoided
Hmm.
and just went, like that's probably cute and all, but not for me. But I went ahead and I put it on yesterday, and it was a very weird format, first of all. Something that I'm more used to seeing by randoms on YouTube,
YouTube.
where
Yeah.
it's kind of like a very spacey but aesthetically pleasing um,
Fully CG'd.
animated,
Yeah.
fully CG'd, animated type background. And then the format was kind of like an interview format. So Earthbean is the interviewer, and extraterrestrial being is the one doing the answering. And I think I'm trying to remember how they pronounce it. Was it Tigetans? I
I
think
don't
was
know.
the Tigetans, I
I
believe
watched
was the
it.
name of the.
I watched it in preparation for this recording, and I already can't remember
Yeah.
how they pronounced it.
I Let's put it this way. That part's not important
Right.
because again, that was something that my brain immediately skipped over and went,
And
yeah, 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 they picked it like
we'll include the information somewhere. There will be,
yeah,
if you're following us, or maybe we'll make show notes. I don't know what we'll do, but
yeah,
somewhere you will be able to find this if you're interested in what we were talking about.
yeah. So, it was one of those things where I start listening, and some of it is like, oh, yeah, yeah, I've heard this sort of thing before. All right. Well, it's 32 minutes long. So it wasn't a huge investment of my time. If it distracted me from the heat for 32 minutes, it was a blessing. What I was not prepared for was to get whammied at several parts throughout, especially since I was fully prepared to be like, uh huh, uh huh, uh huh, through the whole thing. And I, I can't even point to specifics today. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I could have pointed to specifics to you yesterday after I watched it. Um, there were just certain times where I found myself fully in full cry mode,
Hmm.
fully reached into all the things, and it wasn't just the heart space. There was something underneath that there was a nerve that it was pinging at the same time that was very much a you have work to do somewhere surrounding some of the things that were mentioned here. You've got some trauma that's bubbling up to the surface, and this is getting you in the heart space, but it's also pinging it's pinging a raw spot. It's pinging something that's hurtful and painful for
Hmm.
you to listen to or hear or see. And even today, I'm sitting with it, and there's still that I'm getting that warmth, and then I'm also getting the ouch.
Hmm.
And so, one of the things that I asked Heather Heatherson to do here is to pull some cards and hopefully help me get some clarity, help us get some clarity about what the hell's going on this week.
Technically, she asked me to pull one card, but you can't ask a deck junkie to choose a deck and pull one card. That's silly. We don't do that. So I've got 3 decks here. Whether or not we'll use them, doesn't really matter. But they all called to me. And this one that I'm about to pull from, I got pinged as she was talking about her raw nerve. So I'm hoping something interesting will come up from the Cosmic Reading cards by Nari Anastasia. Is that really her name? Was Nari Anastasia really destined to create the Cosmic Reading cards? I'm sure she
It
was.
certainly sounds
Otherwise,
like it.
she wouldn't have done it. But the culture we come from, the goth culture, I get triggered because people tend to, call themselves Kitty and Raven a lot, or Athena Bloodrose. People choose names. And so I'm just always curious, is this a name you chose for yourself? Or, is it your cosmic name? Is it your real name? Did you just happen to have something that ethereal at birth? You missed the Helen boat and you got
I
Nari Anastasia. It's possible.
I knew no less than 6 Merlins at any one given point in time.
Ugh, why? Why?
I don't know.
All right. What we have
All totally
here.
different.
Oh, well, this is fitting.
Mm, lay it on me.
We have
I can't see.
I know there's a glare. I'm sorry. We have move forward, and
Move
it's a
forward. It's
picture
okay.
of.
Like you guys can't see either,
But you will if you follow us on Instagram using our inside
yeah,
voice, all one word. We will post this so that you can
we will
see
post it.
what the hell we were talking about. But it's a picture of a starry galaxy night sky and a really fuzzy shadow, humanoid shaped shadow, and it says move forward. Move forward. So this is, and we assumed that when you show, every time one of
Yeah.
us or both of us gets whammied, we assume it's like, oh, here's a whole new thing for you to deal with. Boom. And that's why we are crying. That's why we are emotional. It's why we're vulnerable. It's and new information is about to come through. And sure enough, that's exactly what's happened.
Cattle prod.
Wow. Cattle
I
prod.
mean,
Wow. Holy shit. Okay.
sometimes that's what's needed.
Sure.
But, you know,
Do you want me to read it, or is that like way too long and stupid? Because sometimes it's long and stupid and boring and
nah.
people don't care.
Well, I mean, look at it. Look at it. If it sounds good to you and you want to read it, or if you want to take a second and then sums up. I
Okay, well, it
mean,
starts with a quote, which is pretty apropos. You can't start the
okay,
next chapter of your life if you keep rereading the last one.
surely.
So that speaks to
Yes,
your
this is
raw
good
nerve.
advice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Enough said.
All right.
So,
Cool.
but you still have no real conscious inkling of what that raw nerve might be related to.
No, I don't. I don't. Not at the moment. And it was really funny because I really tried to glean more into it yesterday. And I feel like my peeps on the other side were very much like a look, you were supposed to get a little shove, not a huge shove.
Mhm.
Like you fell too deep in the hole, girl. Like what happened?
I feel like your guides tend to blame you a lot for overstepping, and yet I feel like that's really on them because they should know who you are by now, and they should know how sensitive your gas pedal and your brake pedal are. That's on them.
Although at the same time, I am willing to take some accountability for that because I do tend to want to dive in. Um, well, I tend to want to dive in. That
Mhm.
that's the thing. Like I tend
But
to not just like
we know
get a
this about
message
you.
and sit with it.
But we know this about you. They know this about you.
But I also feel like part of my lesson sometimes is look, you don't have to do the deep dive every time right away. Like sit with it for a minute, decide whether or not you want to do that right now,
Mhm.
and then go about your business the way you feel is necessary. Not like but I tend to like fall off the edge of the boat and then do a backward swan dive into the ocean of whatever it is and
So,
kind of sink in it for a while.
what do you think is the what do you think is at the root of that compulsion to deep dive every time?
Um, it's a good question, and it's one that I've attempted asking myself before, and I don't know that I come up with a really good answer other than there is a pulling inside me that leads me to it. And most of the time very much like being an empath and having the emotions come to the forefront fairly quickly. This is kind of the same kind of pull where I'm doing it before I even am consciously aware of it most of the time. And so I don't know if that's part of the lesson is for me to slow that process down so that I am more choosy about what I dive into right away so that maybe that I am conserving my energy
Mhm.
a little better and not they just the phrase that I just got and I totally heard my grandmother, stop making a mountain out of a molehill. Um, but I kind of I tend to dive all in because I'm curious. I mean, and who isn't curious?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you get into things like this. Who isn't curious? I mean, come
Mm-hmm.
on. I I do have to give myself a little bit of a break because considering that I was very much indoctrinated into this world very early on in my life, very well present, presently aware of at least some of the things that I was going through, and really had no one to guide me through it or even talk about it with until I was much older. So I'm not surprised that I took that route very early on of wanting to dive into it whenever I saw an opportunity. And of course, nowadays there's a much greater opportunity to dive in. But I will say at the same time, as someone who also tries to teach others, I am constantly telling other people to slow down. And I don't know that I have always taken the opportunity to take my own advice to heart and slow down, especially when it comes
Normal.
to messages like this. Yeah.
Sure. It's always easier
Um
to give the advice because,
oh, sure.
people, when we're interacting with people and they need advice or they could use, they could benefit from some advice and they want it, um, those people are reflecting back to us what the lessons that we need to work on too. It's no
Yeah.
coincidence that they're there, having experienced something that you can resonate with. That's what draws you together in the first place. It's not the crystals in the shop or the grapefruit in the produce section that brought you together. It is literally your resonance. You attracted like magnets for a reason.
Yeah.
So, of course, you're going to be able to give them advice. You've been there. It doesn't mean you've actually taken the advice.
Well, and I guess to be fair, if if you cannot read your own energy, they have to be able to show you that in a different way, and that
True.
different way is usually in the people that we come across.
Right.
Um there is that. But
Another thing I'd like to add real
yeah,
quick before we move on is, I can tell that, it's easy to interpret you may not have taken your own advice as you're not walking the walk. That's not what I mean by that. What I mean by that is that here this person is presenting another level in which you are, maybe poised to figure out how to apply that advice there. It doesn't mean that you haven't already applied that advice successfully and improved other parts of yourself, your life, your experience, whatever is, whatever works, in other ways, in other forms. There are so many levels going on at the same time, working on different aspects. Each of us is
I may
like a
have lost you there
diamond.
for
We're
just a
very
sec.
complicated. We have many facets.
Yeah,
And so when the
there
same
you go.
advice comes around again, and you're like, not this again. Are you joking? Like, I have to do this again? Remember that you have done it before, that it's not coming back because you failed. It's coming back because, hey, you passed the test. Now
Yeah.
you've leveled up and you get to apply it to this more complicated or more difficult subject. I just wanted to put that
Yeah.
out there because a lot of times when we're talking about spiritual stuff, we make generalizations and it's so complicated. It really it goes down to just this micro level, and it's not to take your accomplishments away from you or to be like, well, I'm a spiritual teacher so I know more than you. No, 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 no. Please, no, we're all humans, we're all learning at our own rate, and if what we are saying can help you, let it be. But I only want to help.
Oh, and
I don't, it's not about
sure.
diminishing people.
Well, and just in the same turn here, it's like I'm speaking about myself
Yeah.
in much the same manner. And trust me, I've I've been through this more than a time or two. And I do teach others, but that doesn't mean that those lessons don't come back around for me as well. It it absolutely doesn't mean that. We're all kind of going about this the same way. The point of the teaching and the sharing is just to help because we have each other. That's it.
Mhm.
I mean, we have some divine guidance on our side, but ultimately we're the ones that are here joining in this experience. And if we don't stop to help each other cross the road occasionally, why would you want somebody else to be sidelined if you can help? Um and sometimes that means stepping in and kind of doing it for ourselves too and going, "Hey, slow your roll for a second. It's cool. Like, you can take a pause
Mhm.
and think about this." And I think that's why it was so interesting yesterday. It's like having that first thought of diving in and then kind of putting the brakes on and just sitting in that. It's interesting because I've been sitting in that weird pocket ever since of the heart space plus the wound all in the same turn. And it's an interesting feeling because I can literally feel the kind of tug of war that's happening inside. There is a feeling of a wanting to dive more into it, a wanting to open the heart space more, and then there's also the wound portion that is like, wait a second, slow down, like I'm not there yet. So, let's be patient with this. And it's a really odd place to be. And it kind of like, I feel a little melancholy. I feel a little, I don't know that I would quite use the term depressed. I don't know if depressed is the correct word, but I definitely feel a little more somber and contemplative and, kind of wondering what the fuck that is that's gnawing away in
Mhm.
the inside somewhere that apparently was buried so deep, so deep. And yeah, like I'm trying to search for specifics in my mind. Like I'm trying to think of very specific things that were said in this show.
Mhm.
Um
Well, I
because
have
again,
specific things.
do you?
I
Well,
do.
then go for it because maybe you'll trigger something that
Exactly.
I didn't, yeah,
I
that I
I
that I
took
can't think
notes.
of
I
right now.
took notes. That's how specific it was. It was just like bing bang boom, like, "Oh." And I was like, "Oh." Um this one made me verklempt. It made me tear up, not because it was emotional, but because it was that I get that feeling like I want to cry when there's validation involved, which was interesting because it's something that I completely off the radar, would have never thought about it. If they hadn't said it, I wouldn't know it, that kind of thing. So, but the first thing I want to talk about is that they are the Tegetians or Tegetis or whatever the hell they're called, are apparently in the Pleiadian star system. Um, and usually, when it comes to watching, discussing, learning about Pleiadian stuff, I get very impatient and I get very annoyed because I have baggage. Less baggage now than when I started my journey, but what was revealed to me as I discovered my own origin, having been from the Pleiades, was um, traumatic. And so every time we talk about them, I'm a little bit like, because and it has to do with, oh, and this ties right in. It has to do with the general population's romanticizing of that star system and the collective that comes from there, the energy that comes from there. They usually relate it to Lemurian energy, and it's usually very kind and gentle and nurturing and zen. And that was not my experience with the energy. That's not to say that that doesn't exist. It's just to say that my past life memories, when they started coming through, were not nurturing, were not gentle. And but what they said was that their physiology is different than ours, to be expected, because the interviewer had asked, "You appear human. Is that correct? And they're like, yes, but our physiology is different. And one of the things they mentioned, such a random thing to cry about, like almost cry about, they said that while our brain has two lobes, theirs has one. And I was like, why would that be an evolutionary O? And the answer came through before before the interviewer could ask, before they could answer, before I could finish my question, the answer came through. And what came through was that our two-lobed brain is specifically designed to go back and forth between polarity. It's specifically designed to facilitate a world that is ruled by the concept of polarity, and that their one lobe
Yeah.
brain was not necessary. They didn't need that anatomy in order to navigate their experience. But the thing that I find funny about that, and this tied in at the end, and it's a big message that my guides are telling me I don't have it quite right yet, but I'm on to something. And it's something I've been working on for a long time. Um, when I first started my journey, the deep dive part of my journey, where I'm like, aliens are real and angels and all of this is the same thing. And, blah, when my mind was getting blown, it was happening. I was working with a close friend of mine, and we were doing channeling sessions. He would channel and I would take him into trance and he would channel. We found that it worked better that way. And he started channeling the Federation of Light. And I found it difficult at first to interact with Ashtar, because it felt so, oh gosh, what's the word? um,
Over the
Polite.
top.
No, not at all. Polite and pleasant. And oh gosh, I don't even know how to describe it. I didn't contemplate running into this issue. I didn't know that this would be an issue. It was very homogenous. Yeah, it was homogenous. And it felt too homogenous, like something was missing. And I was like, uh, wait, but question. I have a question that I can't pose to you because I don't even know what the question is consciously yet. And then I realized that when you listen to a lot of spiritual teachers speak about um, higher density or lower density places, which would be, I guess, higher dimensions, depending on, how you want to talk about that, they would say things like, in higher dimensions, they don't experience polarity. And instantly, that gets under my skin. Instantly. And so I was thinking
Mhm.
about the single lobed brain. And then at the very end of the video, they're talking about, what are they talking about? They're talking about um, how, well, at the beginning, they're talking about how they have a blockade around Earth to keep ships with undisclosed agendas from entering or exiting, and how they're capturing ships, and how a lot of the ships are reptilian, and getting into all this Star Wars bullshit. And I'm like, okay, so what came through was, obviously they experience polarity, otherwise they would not be involved in any sort of battle or protection scenario. You can't have a battle or protection scenario without polarity. But what the guides were trying to get me to understand, and they're still insisting, like, I'm almost there, but I don't quite have it. Their experience of polarity is not within one skin, one shell, one being. Their experience of polarity is macro. And so it is still us versus them. And that what they did was they showed me Earth, and then they showed me
Mhm.
a chessboard. And they said the game board of Earth was created to play out this bigger version of polarity. And us as chess pieces upon Earth are each, because everything is hollow fractal, the whole is included in all of the smaller parts. Nothing is separate from the whole. So what they were saying is that our brains have two lobes to represent the two macro sides of this battle that has up until now been sort of beyond our comprehension or our awareness. And I just found that really interesting. So, it is possible that some of these entities coming through preaching the love and light agenda, which is ties back into the Ashtar thing, I always felt they had an agenda. I always felt like as long as I was dealing with them and I was, quote, on their side, that it would go well. But I always felt that there was something missing. I was like, okay, you're always talking about love and light and upliftment, and that's great and all, but there's a lot here that isn't uplifting. And that kind of needs to be addressed too. And I remember there was a point in time, and it was scary for me because I was you want to be, quote, good, whatever that means, but you haven't quite got the handle on what it means to be good for yourself. You've got a handle on what it means to be good as you appear to your external environment. What does it mean to be good in your parents' eyes? What does it mean to be good in your boss's eyes? What does it mean to be good in, get good grades in school, that kind of thing. But very few people have sat down and contemplated, what do I think it is for me to be good? And this was, happening at the same time. I was unraveling all of this at the same time. But that feeling of agenda, not that their mission or whatever, it's called, is bad because it's only one-sided. It's not a judgment from me. It was a feeling of missing something. It was a feeling of not getting the whole story. I remember feeling like they were withholding a lot, and it made me just titchy. It made me annoyed, and so my questions would get more probing as time went on. And I reached a point where I guess my beliefs evolved and coalesced to the point where talking to the Federation was no longer going to further my progress. And those talks ended and were replaced with something new. But my point is that I realized that when you are talking to a higher density or higher density being, which means lighter, fifth dimension, that's what you kind of think of that as. When you're talking to these beings who are helping us ascend, and you're talking to the light side, it is an agenda for them, and they don't see it as polarity because they, in their minds, are all unified for this agenda. But having a two-lobed brain, when their one-sided agenda comes into my brain, I'm like, but what's the other side? Well, of course, the other side is all of the darkness that we're really starting to see highlighted on the planet right now. And, it's, but I wanted to be able to make a conscious decision of who I was supporting and why. It's kind of like getting to know your candidates. When you first start channeling and hearing people channel, you're like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and this
Sure.
resonates with this doesn't, and this resonates with this doesn't. It was just a really difficult time because I felt kind of honored to be talking to, ooh, Ashtar, he's a thing. Oh, and then I look up Ashtar, and apparently he's been around since the 50s, and there's a whole dome with sound, and there's stuff happening with Ashtar, and I'm like, he's kind of a celebrity. This is a big deal. And yet there's another part of me that's like, yeah, but you're withholding, and I can feel it. Why are you withholding? And a lot of times the answer would be because you're not ready for that. You haven't gotten there yet. And a lot of times the answer would be even less forthcoming than that. And of course, looking back on it, I see that it was my own personal growth and the point in my journey that I was at that wouldn't have allowed me to properly understand the answers that they could have given. I figured out the answers to those questions. They're no longer questions for me. But I needed to go at my own pace. And there came a time where I couldn't go at my own pace and talk to the Federation of Light. It would be like banging my head against a wall because they literally did not have the answers that I was seeking. I had to go find those elsewhere. I couldn't ask them about the dark agenda and what it looked like because all the answers they could give me veered away from it. because their entire goal as a collective is to uplift. So if you want to
Sure.
find out about the darkness, you're not going to be able to find out about the darkness because their minds are unified regarding darkness, that it must be lit, that it must be enlightened, you know? And the same goes is true for the dark side, where they're like, everything must be bleh. We must use resources. We must, they each have their own side. And those are the two lobes of a higher dimensional brain. They're separate. And so by playing this game, it unifies them and it keeps them interacting and it keeps that polarity still going, which is the concept of polarity. That's how we learn. And that's why all of this is happening on every level, is to learn, source learning about itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it just was, that was a little bit, no pun intended, mind blowing. I know I'm the only one that got that, but it was a little mind blowing for me because I had been searching, for those answers for a long time because it just drove me nuts. So that was another thing that I um, experienced while watching that, and that was pretty huge for me.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember that part, and that was really interesting. That was one of the first things that did kind of stick out, that made me take my thumb off of the ready to pause, ready to change to a new video button. I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's an interesting little tidbit right there."
Which part?
Um the part about the physiology
Oh,
and
the
the
brain part.
brain,
Mhm.
and it made sense to me in other ways too, in some of the stuff that's been I thought it was interesting, first of all, that they were talking about the neurology and nervous system of those beings and how they differed, and that was something that's been coming up more recently for me as well,
Mhm.
um, over the course of, yeah, several days now, because the previous day we actually watched something else on Gaia that was another interview, both humanoids this time, both Earth beings this time, in a regular interview, talking about neurology and women in particular and hormones. And I thought it was interesting, um, for the thing that we watched. Well, you watched it this morning. I watched it yesterday.
Mhm.
That
The alien video.
they were the alien video, that they were talking about a more like the more feminine presence
Everything is
within
for
their,
women here. That's what they
yeah,
said.
in
Everything
their
is for women here.
community.
I caught that too. I even wrote a note on that. Because it's no coincidence that you had me watch that other interview talking about
Mm-hmm.
women and their cycles and how they're always on these cycles and how we differ in what we receive from hormones. For men it's dopamine, and for women the success hormone, so to speak, is oxytocin, and that's what we strive for. We that's what motivates us. And so and I thought it was really interesting that she was saying, this world that we live in, it's made for men. And if we started to shift it to a world that's made for women, or that's more inclusive to women, we would really be able to take advantage of a huge resource, women. And I thought that it had to be no coincidence that you had me watch this alien thing today, and the alien that they're channeling literally says everything here is for women, and not every woman wants a mate because women are interested in certain things and men are more interested in other things that really may not interest women as much. And I thought it was so interesting because there it is again, the polarity.
Mm-hmm.
One day we watch a video that says you're living on a planet that's really made by and for men, and the next day I watch a video from you that it
Mm-hmm.
that says we're from a planet, or we're from a whatever, a system that is made for women. And I'm like, I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those things where, it's like not everything that we discuss is going to be worked out in the what we normally do about an hour and 40 minutes or so.
Mhm.
This is not going to get worked out in an hour and 40 minutes.
Mm-mm.
This is going to keep weeding back in and showing up in multiple discussions, I'm sure,
Yeah.
because it's like just seeing a giant tarp over a big pile of stuff somewhere randomly and going, that's interesting. I wonder what's under the tarp, but going, it could be a dead body, it could be a pile of trash, it could be a treasure. We don't know.
Could be a
And
pile of dead bodies.
slowly it could be. And, over the top of a pile of treasure. And just kind of slowly picking up a corner and looking underneath and trying to suss out what is that we see peeking under there. What like I don't want to just rip the tarp off,
Mhm.
but
Well, you can't just
you
rip the
know,
tarp off.
no.
We literally haven't been provided enough information to rip the tarp off. It's impossible.
But I'm going to keep lifting back and curling back that corner as
Mhm.
much as I can.
Mhm.
Until I feel like I have a good idea on how to take the rest of it off. It's just one of those interesting parts of taking the dive into this particular world, of deciding that this is something that you want to explore, because the more tarps you find, the more corners of tarps you start to lift up, the more you realize that there's some really interesting things happening
Mhm.
in this world. And it just, it triggers a whole domino effect of things to happen within your life. And I think,
Oh.
it helps if you can prepare yourself for that. Yes, more messages coming through, because
Sorry.
I'm like, I'm empty.
Really? Uh, kind of more
Yeah.
messages. If it's correct, what I heard originally when I was watching the video, and then I related it back to that other video about how the woman was talking about, and we'll put all the information somewhere where you guys can find it, but where the woman
Mhm.
was talking about the hormones and the cycle and blah, blah, blah. Um, Originally, I tapped into with my brain mind that, okay, this is all happening for a reason. Obviously, you don't find when you start to find echoes when your external experience starts to provide echoes of what's happening, from within the information that you're getting from your guides, that's when you know that the message is a lot. It's supported by a collective energy, that the energy has shifted and
Mhm.
now it's supporting a certain kind of information to come through. And what I picked up on was, even though we didn't make it to the actual event because weather was not in our favor, I had planned with a group to go well, alien hunting. I mean, we were going to go look for aliens over at in San Pedro, and what started that was a friend was telling me that the dude from History Channel, what's his name, the Greek dude.
I cannot brain today, but I am going to try looking it up. Alien Guy History Channel,
Giorgio
because
A.
I'm a
Tsoukalos.
librarian in training.
Is Giorgio A. Tsoukalos. Is that right?
Yep,
Yeah.
there he
Okay.
is. I
So
love it
that
that all you have to do, people, is type in Alien Guy History, and Google shows you, like, literally, I'm showing you on
yeah,
my
but I can't
phone,
I
that
can't
is,
see it because all I can see is your green screen.
oh,
Um, yeah.
it
Well,
literally comes up.
I typed in History Channel Greek guy. But this shows you how invested I am in disclosure. I
Right?
do not care. I don't, it's not my bag. I think it's cool that people have that. I'm into ghosts. Some people are into aliens. Some people are into Bigfoot. do you, boo? But
Yeah.
since it's coming up, I, out of the blue, I don't go anywhere. I'm pretty much a hermit. If I can choose hermiting, I will choose hermiting. I like my house. The end.
So he's
Uh,
a ufologist.
sure.
He's behind the Ancient Aliens program that
Right.
was big on History Channel and Sci-Fi and
But
got kind of redistributed everywhere.
he's better known as the guy with the hair. Let's face it,
The
that's the
guy with the
truth.
hair.
The
Yes,
guy
this
with
is
the
true.
hair. But apparently, the rumors about ships taking off and landing between Catalina and our coast have gotten so uh, intense that he's now renting a property in the area so that he can experience it, keep tabs on it, whatever Greek ufologists with hair do. I don't know what he's doing over there. But I thought it was interesting. I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll go see the aliens. That'll be cool. Everyone can get together since they already live down there anyway. And I was like, wee, aliens, yay. Which is weird, again, because it's not something I typically gravitate towards. Again, the outing didn't happen. We'll reschedule. It'll happen eventually. But I thought it was interesting that here we have, me of all people spurring everybody into action for a group meetup to see aliens, and then actual aliens, not the movie. And then all of a sudden you tap into your own alien stuff. It's coming through. So with my brain mind, I'm like, okay. Oh, and then there was also a Disclosure Fest that just happened over the
Yeah.
weekend. And
Yeah,
a
which
friend
we
of
had
ours
a
went to
friend of ours
Disclosure Fest.
attended.
Yeah. And so there's a serious energy coming up to support disclosure. And I know a lot of people are going to be very excited about that. But what they just told me while you were talking, which made me, in the middle, is that this is how disclosure is going to look. This is the first approach. This is how it's, and in a way we already knew that because we've been talking to
Yeah.
extraterrestrial guides for years now. It's not new to us, but
Yeah.
I just think that it's going to start happening on a grander scale for more people.
Yeah.
This is the disclosure that the disclosure you think you're looking for, like tic tacs in the sky and government disclosure. That's not what it's going to look like at first, even though that's already started to happen. It all supports the energy supports all of it. But really where it's going to come through for people is in, new channelers coming out with new information, old wounds being brought to the surface
Mhm.
that may feel completely disconnected from your knowledge of reality. A lot of people are going to come online, and the catalyst for their awakening is going to be an element of disclosure instead of
Yeah.
how most of us awakened, which was our external environment provided some kind of traumatic experience for us to completely disassemble and fall apart into pieces. And then we had to slowly piece ourselves back together. A lot of people, I'm feeling, are going to awaken through disclosure. And that disclosure is
Yeah.
going to continue to happen internally. And the more people who start to awaken through disclosure, the more your external environment is going to disclose to you. Because it, quite honestly, now
Yeah.
that I'm looking at it, it's like, duh, it can't happen any other way. We create our external environment.
Yeah.
So, in order for
Yeah, if you're going
disclosure,
to if you're going to shift it on that grand of scale, then everybody has to kind of be on the same page.
they do. And they were even saying that in that video
So,
that you had me watch.
mhm.
In the alien video, they were saying, that more and more people are coming online or will come online, but you have to lead the way. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. It went away. Apparently, it doesn't matter.
But that's basically what we're doing here. I mean,
Yeah.
and this is kind of our contribution to that
Hmm.
is letting you in on the conversation that we've been having for decades now.
Hmm.
Um, and usually a fairly small handful of people get to hear about it, but now we're opening that up so that more people can hear about it, because also know that we're not the only ones that are thinking these things or having these conversations. The natural byproduct of then kind of leaking these conversations out to others, or others saying back to us, oh, I was just talking with so and so the other day about something like that, or that I came across that in a, in a book that I was reading, or in an old YouTube video that I was watching, or this other conversation that I overheard, or, fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
It but it's helpful to have that kind of support. I think that's the hardest part of stepping into this whole process, is not feeling like you're supported in it necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more people that come online, the more comfortable it becomes, because people feel that they are supported, at least in some way.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
just by
and
hearing other people
ultimately,
talk about it.
the tables will turn, and it'll become it will become mundane. It will become
Mhm.
expected. To a degree, things like that will be taken for granted because it will become normalized. But right now we're not there, and it went away.
Love it.
Whatever.
Um, but it is funny because, you know, I can also point to it in just some of the general articles that are popping up. Like, I could probably, let's just have fun with this, shall we? Let me look up my little homepage and see what pops up. There was something that came up this morning on my phone, and like, usually shows up in the Apple Plus, the stuff that I can't get to, which is fine because I don't need to read it. Like, most of the time I just need to see that it's there. Let's see if anything comes up. To do to do to do to do. I Okay. Well, I'm not seeing anything. Oh, all right. So here's one. Um, Esquire. Now, this is a magazine that's been around forever and ever, a gentleman's magazine, right? Where you're used to seeing, like, sharply dressed men with polo ponies and such in Esquire,
I don't think they have polo ponies. I
tightening their
don't.
ties.
That's not a thing. That's literally
Well,
Ralph Lauren.
way
That's
back in
not
the,
Esquire.
like I know, but in the beginning days of Esquire, that's usually what
Oh,
their front covers
the
look like.
vintage
If
days.
the vintage, if we go all the way back to the beginning, that's kind of the vibe that Esquire had. And now the vibe that Esquire is rocking is, I tried everything, then I tried ayahuasca. And this is how
Wow.
you know that
That
shit's
it's
going down out there.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
Esquire just covered an article on ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And there were
That's a
like two others that were interesting this morning, that was like, one had to do again with like the nervous system. Um, and then I can't remember what the other one was, but you know, that part doesn't really matter. The most important part is that it's showing up
it is, yeah.
in really normal, what we think of as quote unquote normal places.
Mhm.
People where the other half normally goes to seek their news and their advice and such. They are now starting to get the echoes
Right.
of what we've been talking about for
Mhm.
years now.
Right.
And it's funny because, and I feel like such an old lady sometimes, like, get off my lawn, kids. Um, because I'll sit there and I'll scroll, do a little scrolling in the morning. And it's like, I find myself going, oh, you think that, do ya? You're coming around to that, are ya? And it's like, wow, you're such an old lady. Shut up. But it's funny and interesting and exciting and scary, like, all in the same ball of twine.
Mhm.
And for this week, it's like, hell, today we're recording. It's Tuesday, June 21st. It's the summer solstice here on the Northern Hemisphere. And, I'm usually I have some sort of idea on, like how I want to spend the day. And usually something comes up and there's, something that I want to focus on. And usually it involves creating an altar and doing a ceremony and doing all the things. Today I have no mind for any of that.
Mhm.
I'm just kind of sitting in a place of just kind of quiet.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to it.
Mhm.
I'm not mad at the fact that, I didn't get up and watch the sunrise at over the Tor or over Stonehenge this morning, which is something that I would normally do on a solstice because it just speaks to me. Today, not a whole lot is speaking to me, and yet in the same turn, I feel like that is a different kind of speaking to me. I'm kind
Absolutely.
of being allowed a moment to sit in my own space, to get quiet with my own thoughts and feelings about what's been happening the last couple days. And I actually have a very interesting venture coming up at the end of the week. On Friday, I am going to get an intuitive tattoo, which is something that I've had kind of in the works now for almost 3 years,
Mhm.
and finally had set a date on it and then have moved that date twice in the process of picking a date. uh, and eh, I it's a very interesting feeling because this particular artist that I'm going to, she does some really amazingly beautiful work, and I fell in love with it the minute I saw it. And I've been following her for years now and really wanted to have this done. It was something that I definitely felt called to, and then had the opportunity gifted to me. And, you know, I find myself now just a few days away, and I'm having a hard time even wrapping my brain around it for several reasons. Um, it's like since the pandemic, like right before the pandemic, I was in a really good place as far as like getting my health on track. I had lost a lot of weight. I was feeling better about myself. I felt like I was uh had a better relationship with food, or was gaining a better relationship with food. Um my stress levels were through the roof because of other things that I had going on in life, but I had done a lot of work just previous to and was starting to shift that as well. And then once the pandemic hit, that kind of came to a slow halt.
Same.
And it was almost one of those things where I didn't even notice it at first. I didn't even realize that I had stopped, or that I had turned to uh food as a comfort item. I didn't even realize at the time that I needed a comfort item, because honestly, I needed the break so badly
Mhm.
that I was grateful that it was happening on many levels. I needed to not participate in so much life happening.
Right.
Um but as we kind of kept turning through this process, it really wasn't until last year sometime that I was like, "Whoa, dude. Uh mm, not feeling super great about how all that went down. Like, not feeling super great about losing traction in that particular
Mhm.
part of my life.
Mhm.
Um and it's odd that this kind of crept up as a like kind of like shining a floodlight on the issue for me, because my first thought was, I'm getting an intuitive tattoo. So at this point, I have no idea what it looks like or where it's going to go. I have I'll have a say in where it goes. But when I started thinking about my body and about this really cool thing that I was going to have done, which ultimately is something that I would want to share with others, and then thinking about the fact that it's actually going to be somewhere on my body, and that, like, I don't even like to be on camera with my best of friends, that I'm like, oh, how sad.
Right.
Like, and it makes me a little bit sad because I'm like,
Sure.
I'm going to be super proud of this, but I'm not going to want to show it off.
Right.
And that, it's hurtful.
Yeah.
It's kind of a crap place to be in when you're thinking about, oh, this is this really exciting thing that I look forward to for so long, and now I'm going to get it done, and I'm ugh, kind of feeling some dread around it. I'll go as far to say, because I'm not super happy with that portion of myself, and I kept putting it off, thinking, oh, I'm going to do a work, I'm going to hop on it. I'm going to hop on it, and I'm going to do all the things. And a month later, I'm going to be transformed. And then I'll feel so much better about having it done. And that is just really not the case at all.
Right.
Not the case at all. But I've also felt this whole time, each time I get it's funny because I'll get the nudge mentally, like where I'll get in a place where it's like, okay, let's take care of ourselves. Let's do this thing. You are ready for this. This is coming from a place of self-love, and we are going to take care of ourselves and feel good about ourselves, and let's do this. And I will go to set things up, and sure as shit something will go down that completely sidelines me. And I had a really hard time for a while sussing out whether it was self-sabotage or
Mhm.
whether there was a deeper lesson there. And I keep coming back to the deeper lesson. And the deeper lesson is, look, you are right now where you are. And you have to have some grace for yourself for where you are. Be accepting of where you are, and understand that that is not a bad place just because you don't have what you feel is a great hold on it. And I almost feel like you had said earlier when we were talking offline that you felt like what I've watched and what I've seen and stuff is coinciding with me getting this experience at the end of the week.
Yeah.
And I sat with it for a few minutes, and it's like, I almost feel like that is going to be the other portion of catalyzing those things to happen,
Mhm.
is that, you know, maybe that will nudge me to a place of, not because I feel bad about myself in the moment, and I want to feel better about myself later, so if I get it done I will want to show it off and I will want to be better
No, no, no.
or look better. It's not that. It's not
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
No. It's about actually being proud of all of the accomplishments, all of the work that I have done to get to a place where I feel comfortable having something like this done, not for the adornment's sake, but for the kind of the spiritual homecoming almost that it represents, and having it done,
Mhm.
because it's almost like it, it's almost like a completion process.
That is crazy that you said that, though, because, the other thing that I was saying while we were talking about this that you were preparing for offline was that all of this disclosure stuff is coming up leading up to this tattoo for a reason. And the fact that you just referred
Mhm.
to it as a homecoming is not a coincidence.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, they literally showed me a
S
spiraling galaxy for a reason, and you said that was important, but you never told me why.
Mhm. But it feels like kind of coming for full circle in the a lot of the work that I have done up to
Mhm.
this point, and acknowledging it
Mhm.
in in a really solid way. And I
Mhm.
think um and that's been hard. That's been hard all along to kind of recognize um in a big way the work that's been done,
Mhm.
because I think I've always been in a place where I've realized I've had an awareness that, look, you've done a lot, but there's still a really long way to go. Like,
Mhm.
don't get too cocky, you're not there yet, sort of a thing.
Mhm.
But I tend to not stop to celebrate the shifts that have happened in a significant way. I kind of brush them off and to the side and go, you know, keep your nose down and keep going because you're not there yet.
Right.
And I
Which with
feel
that
like this
attitude, you'll never
is
be there.
exactly. And I think this is a way of going, you know what? You've come a really long way.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of work. Stop for a second and recognize that, you
Which
know?
ties in to what you were saying earlier about them getting you to not do such a deep dive and to stop.
Mhm.
It's kind of it's a bit of a light and shadow there, because earlier we were talking about not doing the fully, being more cognizant of whether or not you want to undertake that deep dive at that time, which would be like,
Mhm.
the shadow side of you wanting to dive into everything and just know everything. And then here, you've got a very gentle way of acknowledging how far you've come. So you have that
Yeah.
driving force that you're used to, the Jamie that we all know and love that wants to go get. It got her. I'm watching her face. It got her. We have the Jamie we all
Red
know and love.
cheeks.
Yep. The Jamie we all know and love, who wants to deep dive and wants to find out all the things and go, 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 go. That Jamie is not capable of stopping long enough to do what Friday Jamie is going to do, which is stop and record her progress. So here you have the polarity again from your galactic side saying, hey, stop and appreciate how far you fucking come. And you have the way they triggered this was to make you deep dive on this disclosure stuff. And there are the
Yeah.
tears.
Yeah. And sit in full acknowledgement of the work you've done, the progress that you've made, and of yourself, because
Yeah.
that is what's going to trigger you to treat yourself more kindly
Yeah.
and to further develop yourself in a way that's actually helpful for you.
Mhm.
It's like, it doesn't matter the I'm not trying to achieve any type of societal, this is what you should look like. It's all internal. It's all for me, but I have a bad habit of not actually doing things for me.
Mhm.
And this is going to be for me.
And that ties into exactly what we were talking about with when they showed me that scale of numbers with zero in the middle, and then you have a full side of negative numbers, and you have an opposite side of positive
Mm,
numbers. When you were talking about getting back to basics, they showed that to me because when we think about getting back to basics, we often think about discarding how far we've come in order to go back to square one and do it over again. And it's important that we don't view it that way, because that is not the truth. The truth is that we were born into and indoctrinated into a society that told us how to be, how to act, where to go, how fast to go there, that all of our resources, our personal resources, were meant for external use, to get feedback from an external source. So we were deluged by all of this programming, which I will, put over in the negative numbers. And then the goal with waking up, with awakening, with ascension, is to muddle through all of that, all of the negative numbers, just to get to zero, just to balance out, just to get to the point where we can recognize the old programs when they're triggered, just to get to
Yeah.
the point where we're no longer automatically, we're not on autopilot giving ourselves away to our environment, just so that we can get zero. Is so important. It really has no importance in our colloquial view of the number. It's nothing. But zero is so important in this journey that we're on, because zero means you've achieved some sort of balance in so many areas of your life that life is no longer controlling you. Zero is sovereignty.
And it's also a point where you get to sit in and revel in your own achievement in a way that you've never been able to before, because you're so busy measuring yourself up to outside things and outside forces that now, when you come back to a 0 point, you come back to it with all of this greater knowledge that you've attained, and you can then see, they're wanting you to see, this is how far you've come.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, don't roll your eyes and go, oh, I already know this.
Mm-hmm.
No, you know this because of all of the work that you've done. And now you get to apply this in so many different ways
Mm-hmm.
on such a new level. What a cool opportunity. So
And
I'm actually
and
looking forward to it.
yay. And part of, the I think part of the desire to deep dive every time, and I might cry. Well, that's uncool. I think um I think part of the desire to deep dive every time, and part of why this has all happened now, ooh, it feels really
Right?
big. And it's going to be put into words, and it's going to be eensy weensy. Um, the deep dive has changed.
Yeah.
I think the deep dive before, the Jamie that was before, that all the work that you've done has been on the deep dive. The deep dive was, how can I save everybody else? And I think the deep dive has become an excitement, because now you know that every time you do a deep dive on your own behalf, you're going to come out with a new tool.
Yeah.
The process of doing the deep dive when you reach zero is you go back into the negative numbers it's a forging process. And then you can take the tool you forge within that deep dive in the negative numbers, you can bring it back to zero and move forward with that and use it to build your positive number side of that scale. I'll have to make a visual of
Yeah.
this, and we'll post it on Instagram, because I imagine listening to it, it's probably like, what? Negative? What? But I see it so clearly in my head, and it makes so much sense. This is them saying to you that you have busted through so many of the distortions that you were indoctrinated with, that you're now able to actually see the purpose of this polarity. What is this face I am seeing? I don't understand what I'm viewing. What is happening?
Sorry, I just got like wide mouth bass face is
She
what
really
she's
did.
seeing through
Woo!
the Zoom,
That was a thing.
with like the eyes rolling back and everything, because they just were like, you've been wanting to see how you've manifested. This is how you've manifested. This is
Mhm.
this is the giving back to you the gift of being able to see what you have manifested. It's
Right.
been happening at such a pace that you haven't noticed it, that you haven't fully taken it in,
Hmm.
that you haven't even realized what you did.
Hmm.
And
And you
here
can't
you
use the
go.
tool until you know you have the tool.
Yeah.
Like, you have this tool. This is it. This is the tool that you've been asking for, and you have it. Now go tattoo yourself and think about that.
And then every time you see the tattoo, know that you manifested that.
Right. Well, and that you're still doing it.
And not just that,
Hmm.
but that you've manifested,
Oh,
look at what you have accumulated, the grand scale of manifestation that's happened.
okay. So this makes much more sense now. I got an image while we were talking just a few minutes ago, and I was going to bring it up, but it felt incomplete. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know if it was time to bring it up, but they just brought it back to me again. So, of course, they're likening your tattoo to a magician's runes. And they're like, but we want you to think of a magician's runes, um, mash it up with a Boy or Girl Scouts sash full of badges.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's, because the purpose of a magician's runes isn't, I'm going to put these sigils on my body and they're going to imbue me with magical power. No, it's, I've created these sigils out of all the work I've done thus far, and they are going to be a placeholder for the magic I've already created for myself, so I can build on top of it as a foundation and use them as tools to help create something on top of that solid foundation that I've already created for myself.
It's an
And
external manifestation of things that you've been accumulated inwardly.
yes, yes. I think that, before times me, before ascension, before awakening, I thought of magician's runes as, you know, in a way, he didn't have the power, so he had to take the power through some picture, through some sigil, through
Mm-hmm.
something that he was tattooing on his body. It was a sacrifice of his body to tattoo these things upon himself. But no, it's a badge of honor. It's a, I've come this far. I created this tool. This is my tool bag. And the magician tattoos those tools on their body so that they're ready to use. I'm manifesting. It's usually on the arms. When they get crazy
Mm-hmm.
about it, it's elsewhere, but usually it's on the arms or right down the center of the chest. So what is that? You've got your Sushumna, your chakra channel, and you've got the
Mm-hmm.
thing you literally create physical things with your hands
Yeah.
and your arms. You literally build with those tools. So the sigils
You're lighting them
are,
up.
yes, which is why they showed me when you were saying I don't really know where I want to get it. I said the back because I thought the spinal column,
Mm-hmm.
that's what came to me, but it makes sense. It completely makes
Yeah, the
sense.
three places that I actually had in mind was the back, my left arm, like outer arm, and I did also think about
Sternum, that's going to
like like the sternum, but I was like, girl, I don't know that I have the
hurt. Am I that badass? I'm not
the
sure.
next one might have to go there because I don't think I've lost a lot of pain tolerance over the years, and I'm going to have to work on building that back up
How do
in
you
a
work on building up
way
pain
that is
tolerance?
pleasing to me. You know what? Right now, it's just I think because of where I'm at physically, and I'm still working with how I am grounding in the amount of energy that I'm receiving. Um, was that your brother?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I wanted to make sure because I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, I have been known to see things in Heather's house,
It was corporeal, I
but
promise.
I'm like, this is a very apropos time for that all to be happening. So I just wanted to make sure
No,
that
we're
it
good.
wasn't an additional thing.
No,
But
not
okay,
additional.
okay, that's all right. Whew. Thank you,
Building up
Chris.
building up pain tolerance.
Um, but no, I think a lot of it right now is just my current physical state and the fact that uh my nervous system is still being tweaked, And I've noticed that just like my skin in general is
Mhm.
more sensitive than it had been previously.
Mhm.
Um so yeah, so it is a little it's a little nerve-wracking thinking about going and having another one done, because my last experience was, I don't know, to 12 or 13 years ago, something like that.
Mhm.
And I have one tattoo, and it's pretty itty bitty. It's not big by anybody's standards. You know, it's not your average Friday the 13th tattoo or anything, but it's very simple and not that big. So thinking about going and having it done, for the most part, I've kept my mind off of that portion of it, because I also have a feeling like the experience is going to handle a lot of that for
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
Um and again, I feel like they kind of reminded me, look, y'all, you've pain. You've been through a lot of pain, and you've been okay. So, eh, you know, don't be.
Well, not only that, I think that there's going to be a certain meditative aspect to
Yeah,
this. There's a reason
yeah,
why
I
you're
feel
going
like
to
it
be
too.
alone during the process. There's a reason why they've been building you into this process. I think tears will be shed. I think that there will be messages that come through, which I can't wait to hear. And I just think it's going to be, you're not sitting in for a normal tattoo. And even a normal tattoo can have those experiences if the intention is there. But
Sure.
you're sitting in with someone who is also spiritually oriented and has created a
Yeah,
process for doing this art that is spiritual to them. So it's quite a different experience than just getting a tattoo. It's a
yeah.
whole thing. And the guides are like, we're taking advantage of every aspect of this whole thing.
And we'll share that too. I'll make sure that I document it at least some way, and to where I can share, because I'm sure she usually does too. So yeah, this is going to be really interesting. I'm interested to see what comes afterwards.
Right,
Like what's going to kind of, what direction is it going to send me to next?
right. And it's
I
nice to
think
be
that's
in a
kind of neat.
place where you can look forward to something.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we finished.
Well, I think we did. This is it all had to come back around some way,
Yeah.
because geez Louises.
All right. So
Holy moly.
if you've enjoyed our talk, please give us a like and subscribe to never miss a show. You can also follow us on Instagram at using our inside voice, all one word. Join us next time as we use our inside voice to talk about whatever comes up, because there's always something. Until then, this is Heather.
And this is Jamie.
And we are using our outside voice to say, stay safe, stay sovereign, and we'll see you next time.